Greetings and salutations. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to today's upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and I really do appreciate them. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? All right, so I had quite the interesting conversation today, and I really value when I get to speak to you guys because, one, I learn more about the great country that we live in, or even if you are not from this country, I learn about, different places. And I actually learned something new today that I did not know existed. We all know that there are military bases throughout the United States. And in order to, in some occasions, in order to kind of keep these military bases out of the public eye, they put them in national forests. What I learned today was that there are these kind of mini military bases that are, many of them are now defunct. And not only were they run by the military, but they were also run with AT&T and other telecommunication companies during the 70s, 80s, actually 60s, 70s, and 80s. And when that kind of, when the landline, hardline, whatever, kind of became defunct, when we all had a miniature computer in our pockets, many of these miniature bases just became non-existent. They really didn't need them anymore. A lot of them went out of commission during the end of the Cold War. A lot of them were like telecommunication, emergency telecommunication, military, And I know that's not a technical term, but military telecommunication, emergency military telecommunications. And where else to put them but in like the most isolated, remote spot that the public, chances are 80% of the public isn't going to get to. If that 20% does, they're immediately turned around. And let's say 2-3% actually figure out a way of getting into the location or just, messing around, they just don't come back. So I ended up speaking to a gentleman today, about in his 30s. His name's Dylan, and he lives in Virginia. I got an opportunity to speak with his dad as well, and the conversation was, well, it started out just like this. I gave him a call. He said, "Hey, how are you?" And he asked me immediately what phone I was using. And I said, "Listen, when I don't use my own phone, I have a phone that I turn off. I know it's like nothing is secure. Elon Musk has already established and told us that, like, the government can get into anything. Even our Proton emails, anything they want, they can get into. Literally. So nothing is unbreakable for them." I said, I have a phone that I turn on, turn off. I put minutes on. I text quickly and I call. It's not connected to my Wi-Fi. It doesn't have any kind of internet access at all. It's off, and that's probably the safest that will be. I'm going to delete your number. I'm going to turn the phone off. And to be honest with you, if one day people in suits come to my house, I'm probably going to huck it out the window where they'll never find it. You know, like I've already got a contingency plan. It's probably stupid, but whatever. And I just wanted to make him feel secure because he was really he was off a little bit. It was just something was off with him. And he said, okay. He said, well, I'm going to tell you some stuff. I don't want you to use my real name. I don't want you to use my dad's real name. I don't want you to share the exact location. You can say it's in the middle of Virginia, which it is. Somewhere in the middle of Virginia. So I end up saying I agree to all that. I get on the phone with his dad. His dad they might have put me on speaker because I could hear both of them. So he introduces himself to me and he says, "Listen, I want you to understand what my son is going to share with you is factual." He said, "I had a buddy of mine that worked at one of these locations via he was not in the military. He worked for a telecommunication company. I'm not going to mention which one. And he said that one day, because we were at a bar one night, we're just talking about our jobs, and he had decided that he was going to pay for everybody. And we were like, "Whoa, where'd you get the money? Did you hit the lotto?" And he's like, "No, I got a new job, and I'm working with the military, but as of, right now, I cannot tell you what I do." He said, and we all kind of laughed at him and said, "Bullshit, you work for a freaking phone company." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I do, but I now work with the military in direct contact," and he's a very smart guy, I guess. "And I was warned by the FBI that if I were to say anything about where I work, what I do, where it is, that I may not come home or I may be put in prison." And we all believed him because he was really nervous about even sharing that. So pretty much we just left it at that. Years go by, and one night after, some years go by, 20 years go by, he no longer works for the telecommunication company, and we are doing something outside together. And he just says to me, there are all of these secret military bases throughout our country, and they are in the most isolated, remote spots. you'll never find them. And if you do, chances are you'll get turned around or you will not come back out of those woods. So that's where he ends his conversation with me. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And he then starts talking to me a little bit about Montauk and some of the uploads that I've done about Montauk. I have a huge fascination about the secrets that our government is holding from us. They have just, they really have some deep secrets that are and fit perfectly in the Luciferian agendas puzzle. So he said, when I was younger, my friends and I, we did a lot of urban exploration or rural exploration. There's a lot of old mines in Virginia, in West Virginia, all throughout the Appalachian. Those old towns that, are now defunct. The 60-year-old towns that just don't exist. He's like, I've been up to Centralia. Centralia is a little remote town in Pennsylvania. I believe Pennsylvania. And it was a coal mining town. Somehow, some way, a fire started in the coal mine. And they couldn't put it out. And that fire spread throughout that coal mine underneath this town of Centralia. And the town became poisoned. Essentially, the air, the water, everything, the ground. Roads cracked from the fire. Houses just crumbled in upon themselves. It's the real version of, if you were to come out of the woods and go into Centralia, you would be like, holy shit, Silent Hill is real. So that he'd been up into Centralia, bunch of other different locations. Now, the importance of the Montauk thing is he had found one of these locations. And apparently there's 2 or 3 of them all within like a 50-mile radius in the woods. And they're not very big. They're just a very odd structured building surrounded by chain link fence with barbed wire, 10-foot tall chain link with barbed wire above it. And if you are able to make entrance into this location, you will enter into the area and you will see these strange building. There's a doorway, usually one, and you go down a set of stairs. You're like 50 feet below the ground. And he had said it was almost like being in a submarine. He said, I didn't see anyone there. A few of my friends went with me. There was a large hole in one of the fences, and we ended up sneaking through this fence. And we found a way to get to inside there. So when we went in, it really truly was like going into a submarine. The strangest thing about it was that there was still active electricity in this. And so when we looked around, we didn't see anything. There was nothing. There was like no kind of military personnel. There was no any kind of secret experimentation, nothing but the electricity and it being in the middle of nowhere. So we left. I went home and I told my dad about it. And my dad said, holy shit, my friend really wasn't lying. My dad then told me the information that he had just told you. And he said, listen, why don't we take and rent or see if we can rent a plane one day, see if someone can fly us around that area and see if we can, find that structure from the air and maybe locate any others that are in that area. And they kind of made a plan of it. They ended up finding someone who owned a little plane, gave them some money, and they went up, just kind of like an afternoon trip. Also, this was going to be, part of Dylan's kind of hobby, but he kind of wanted to figure out where these structures were, and it also piqued his dad's interest too. So they go up, and they're being very quiet about why they're doing it. They have not told the pilot. They're just like father and son day. Can we go over this area? Spend a half hour up here, and we'll have some fun. That's pretty much what they told the pilot. They then go up, and him and his dad start to kind of mark the locations of where they're seeing kind of possible structures, possible small clearings in the woods, anything that looks out of ordinary, which there's one that is rather large that from the woods that you can see. And they had flown over that and they already knew that was there. Public knowledge that there's kind of one of these defunct emergency telecommunication military bases there. But as they're flying through, they see different kind of evidence of different things. They mark it all down. They land their person lands the plane later. Once again, they did not let on to what this was about. So they're just like talking to themselves, doing their own thing, talking to the pilot, asking him questions about, this and that. Just so he would not be led to believe that they were up to something other than what they said. And they land, they go home, and they talk about it. They get a map out of the area, and they start to pinpoint from the main area of one of these now defunct bases that if you live in Virginia, in the middle of Virginia, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not purposely sharing the location because I don't want anyone to go there. That's like the real deal is if you do your own research and, that's on you. I'm not going to be like, hey, right here is this. And there are a couple other ones throughout those woods in that area. And you might find something and you might not come back. So they pinpoint the map. The dad is not going to go with him. His dad's about 10, 15 years older than me. So back then he'd be like my age. But he had a hard job in a factory and he had been hurt while working. So he is disabled. Gets a fairly good paycheck from the accident. And he's just like, listen, I'm going to live vicariously through my kid, essentially is what it is. Dylan, you tell me everything, tell me what you saw. Man, I'm so excited. This, and that. Pretty much him going in the plane with his kid is kind of setting the stage for him to live vicariously through him. Dylan's excited because now he's got a whole new kind of ball game to go to and figure things out. And also now he's got to decide on who he's going to take. Which one of his friends, of his friend group, can he trust to do this with? So he decides, I'm not going to take a shitload of my friends. Not a shitload, but I'm not going to take my normal friend group of like 3 or 4 guys that he usually goes with. He's going to take one person that he knows he can trust, that he knows will have his back, and that friend then knows that Dylan will have his back as well. A person that he's grown up with. He grew up with all his friends, but you always have that one friend that as you're growing up, if shit hit the fan, you know you can count on. That really will, you'll both, if something bad happens and there's like no way to get out of that situation, you're both going to die fighting your way out of it, or try. And that was this one friend that he had. So they drive up to this remote location, and important thing, at the time, he was underage. He couldn't own a firearm, but his dad gave them both a pistol. They both each had a pistol, and they're 9mm pistol, but he gave them that for the precaution of a wild animal, not thinking that no one's going to think they're going to run into what they ran into, even if you listen to and know what the hell is going on out there, to be honest with you. So they both have pistols on them. They're geared up for hiking. They've got necessary supplies. They've got some water. They've got a little bit of substance, food, flashlight, headlamp, pretty much anything that they may need if they get caught in any kind of predicament. At least they have a fighting chance. So they start at one area where they initially found the first one. They go in. Now, mind you, this one friend had been with them, or with Dylan, when they first went in it. And they all had a really odd kind of feeling about it. It's this kind of strange, there's a strange little weird building, and then there's a door. Strangely enough, the first building that they had gone to the first time, that door was open. And they went in. And yes, the electricity was on. As they walked into the main entrance of the door, there was no electricity. But as they went down in this stairwell and counting steps and landings and steps and landings, they figured about 50 to 60 feet in depth under the ground. When they were about halfway down is when they started to notice that, hey, there's some light down here. And then they stopped to listen to see if anyone was around. They get down and it's an opened area. It's actually the area below it is like double the size of the structure above it. Once again, nothing down there of any kind of, some electrical panels, just so what the hell, They figured maybe the wind had blown the door, because the door opened inward, not outward, which is a little weird. I don't know how many people have, usually on a building like that, the door would open outward not inward going in. So that's just a strange kind of, and I wondered, and I said this to him, I said, do you think maybe it was built that way or structured that way for safety precautions or security precautions? So they start there. They enter the building, look, but the door's shut this time. And they're both like, did we shut that when we left? And neither of them could remember. There was also 3 other people. And so they did figure, we probably, one of us probably shut it. So they enter and they look down in the stairwell. You cannot see all the way down because, like I said, it's a set of stairs, a landing, a set of stairs, a landing, and then stairs, and then the base of the building. So about halfway, you could actually make out light. They don't hear anything. They had closed the door, so they couldn't hear any kind of outside noise. And they get out, and they're like, all right. Gets his map out, and they're standing in this secured area. Once again, it is surrounded by a 10-foot chain link fence with barbed wire. They crack the map out, look at the map, and decide, okay, well, here, this is where we saw. We're not sure if it is a structure or not, but there was an anomaly in the tree cover, so maybe there is something over here. They start walking, and they walked probably about 45 minutes into the woods. They'd actually thought, like, maybe they had gotten lost, missed something, coordinates weren't right. And sure enough, as they're hiking through, they make out like what looks like a clearing. There's no trail. They're fucking trailblazing, They look and they're like, is that a clearing? Through the trees, you got like multiple sets of trees, and you're just like, yep. They walk up to it, and what they see is another 10-foot tall chain link fence with barbed wire. And they walk around the whole perimeter of it. And it's roughly half the size, the perimeter's half the size of the first one that they had gone to. But the structure is so much smaller. It's like maybe 20 feet by 20 feet. And if 15 feet in height, not a very large structure at all. Building is of the same design, same building material, concrete, a large metal door, a rust-colored metal door. It's not rusty, it's a rust-colored metal door. And what looks like a strange kind of antenna on it. Not a very tall one, but tall enough, maybe another 10 feet. So that antenna would be about 25 feet in height. And they walked the perimeter to see if there was an entrance or any kind of hole in the fence. They don't see one. So now they're like, well, shit. No one's probably ever been here. No one's probably ever found this. And they start to talk amongst themselves, and they're like, how do you think people got out here? And he notices that there was what looked like, at one point, a kind of fire road that would be in the front, by the front part of the gate, where it is locked. And the fence itself is not padlocked. Well, it is padlocked, but it's not like a padlocked fence where you'd open it like that, There's actually a track. So there's those metal kind of wheels that would spin and the fence would open that way. But whenever this got decommissioned, whoever military or telecommunication company, whoever was in charge of the decommissioning, had closed the fence and had chain locked that fence. So even if there was an electrical surge, it would not budge. Now there was one chain and another chain, so 2 sets of chains with lock on it. And they're kind of looking and they're like, yeah, look, there's what looks to be like a small road, or trail, fire road trail. It's overgrown now, but it's not very wide, and it's something that if by chance someone flew over, they wouldn't notice it, because once again, Dylan had flown over with his dad and they didn't notice it. But through the nature reclaiming, it's gonna, so they're like, well, how are we gonna get in this one? And they're like, they start to look, they crack out the map and start to look at the map and figure where the next kind of anomaly was in the woods. And this one appears to be maybe 15 to 20 minutes away, in a kind of a different location, not like straight. You wouldn't like walk from the woods and go straight that way. And if you took the fire road, or the now reclaimed fire road, you wouldn't be able to get to it either. It was almost like a kind of a diagonal from where it would be. So they're like, let's walk there first. Let's check that one out. And we've got 2 more after we leave this place. So there's that one. And then look, this one is almost about the same distance away. And he's like, and it's weird. He goes, they kind of marked the locations of these structures. And one starts here, and it goes that way, and that way. So if you went to first one to the third would line up perfectly. Second to the fourth would line up perfectly. And they're looking at the map and they're like, I wonder if that's really weird. That's really cool, but it's really weird. Let's check at the next one. And they're like, and if worst comes to worst, there's, we've got bolt cutters. We'll cut a fucking hole in the fence on this one. At least, because if something happens and we have to run, we'll be a hell of a lot closer to getting out of the woods if we're at the furthest one away. So that's what they do. They go to the next one. And it's exactly the same setup, except the woods are much more dense and the fire road is much more grown over. The building is in a hell of a lot worse condition. It looks a lot older, like maybe this one had been decommissioned first or whatever. There's one more that they gotta hike to. So they hike down the defunct fire road, or I'm only calling it a fire road. It's not a fire road. To me, how he described it would be like, because when growing up in the Adirondacks, especially in this region, just west of my house, there was when they were developing that area, there were all of these dirt roads that are now 45-mile-an-hour roads. When I was a kid, were like 1 to 2 lane roads, dirt, with houses, but so that's something like that is what I'm assuming these would look like. So they hike out, they get to the third one, and the third one is literally the same setup, except the fence is there. The fence is looks just as old as that fence, but the structure that was there literally looks like it had been imploded on itself. So there is no structure. It's just you can see where there was one, and it was filled in with the building itself. Almost like a planned demolition or something, and it just caved in on itself and filled in the stairwell and whatnot to get to the to get down to the main part of the, whatever you want to call it, the underground part, where in the first one that they had gone to had control panels. Once again, nothing was in it. It was just this empty, long, wide, empty room, pretty much double the size of the structure. It was concrete, painted concrete floor. There were lines in the floor of like yellow paint and shit. The pillars were painted. It was like a smoothed concrete, whatever you want to call that. I don't know that. I'm not a contractor, so I don't know the exact terms, nor did Dylan. But once again, third building looks like it had imploded on itself. Fourth building, let's hike that way. They've only been in the woods for now about 2 hours. They get to the fourth building and they start to come up to it, and they stop. For some reason, they stopped quickly. He doesn't know why, but his friend had said, dude, don't move. So they both kind of just stopped. And he's like, I think someone's out there. He goes, I swear to God, I saw something. Dylan's like, I didn't looking at the same spot you're looking at. I didn't see shit. What are you talking about? He's like, let's take it slow. Just let's not talk to each other. Let's take it slow and walk up and we'll see. So they do. They get to like maybe 3-4 tree lengths in from the wood line. And what they see is 2 Belgian Malinois and an armed military personnel just in the middle of the perimeter he's in the gated area. And he's like, what the hell? And there's a military jeep parked in front of the gate. It is not inside the gated area. It is outside the gated area, and that is closed. 2 Belgian Malinois are there, and they're both like, we got to be quiet and get the hell out of here. So they literally turn around and they start walking. And of course, now they are on edge because, one, those dogs are, they'll jump that fence and not get caught in that barbed wire. Those things are fucking dangerous and quite intelligent and have a good range of hearing. So they're like, let's just get out of here. Da-da-da. So they get to the third structure, and they get to the second. As they get past the third, they start to talk aloud. They're like, what the hell? Well, that's crazy. Like, this is the furthest one, the deepest one. How did they get out here? Where does these roads go? Where could it be? I didn't see any roads when I was going through, when I flew above this. So they get to the second, and at this point, they're like, we gotta see what's in these. These are small, and we'll cut. What we'll do is we'll go around. We'll make sure when we're coming through that there's no one there. And we'll cut a hole in the back part. So where the overgrown fire road area would be, the gate is here. We'll go in the back part of that gate. We'll be behind the building. We'll cut a small hole in there. We'll go through. We'll get to the door. If we can get in, we can get in. We're not going to break in. If there's, if the door's locked, we won't break in. But at least we can, look around. hopefully it's unlocked. They're like, all right, that's exactly what they plan on doing. So they hike back. They get to the location and they start to cut a hole in the fence. Hole, just get in. They walk around and the door. And Dylan says, I really wish that door had been locked, Jeff. He said, because everything from this point has fucked my whole life. My whole life has been fucked up mentally since this point. They turn the knob and the door opens inward again. Pitch black. They don't hear anything except there's a humming noise. A weird humming. Like almost like a generator. So they hear a generator, or what they think is a generator. They proceed to go down the stairs. The first set hit a landing, and it's literally the same as the first building, just half the size of it. A lot smaller than it actually. They get to the next, but strangely enough, the width of the hallway with the stairs, the landing, everything is about the size of the first structure that they had entered into. Even though this building is only 20 by 20 and maybe 15 feet high. It's just this very strange looking concrete blocked building. It almost looks like a bunker. They get to the first landing and they smell a really very bad odor. They both look at each other and they're like, what is that smell? And it almost smells between these scents, almost like a farm, like hay, or if you've ever been in like a cattle barn where, you know, there's shavings on the ground and underneath the stanchions and piss, like hay, piss, and just a really gross, very vile scent. Something that he hopes he never smells again, because it was just the combination of all the smells with whatever the most potent one was, which he couldn't identify. It was just this really gross kind of bodily decay, gross smell. But you've got, once again, smells that you can almost recognize too. They're like, what is that smell? It is foul. His friend says it out loud, and there's an echo. And they both are like, shit. Because they're still in the dark. They get to the next set of stairs, the next landing, and they see light. And he's like, it's just the same way as the first one. He's like, I'm going to yell hello. And that way, if there's anyone here, we don't have to get in any trouble. We can just run, get out, and, Dylan kind of yells out, hello, we're a little lost. Door was open. Is anyone here? No response, but that echo in that building, which was just very eerie and terrifying, along with that just really bad smell. They get down to the base, or the main floor, and it is once again that brushed concrete floor. It is that gray colored with what appears to be yellow painted lines. The lights on. They figure out what the noise was is it seemed to be some sort of ventilation system in the ceiling above them. And so they're just looking around like, what the hell? Because it's different than the first one they had been into. This one, as they're at the base of the stairs, there's an open kind of room, which I just described, grayish with yellow lines. And just beyond that, there's a door. And it's lit up where they are right now. And they look at each other and they both kind of are like really apprehensive. Like, should we go in there? They both pull out their pistols that Dylan's dad had given them. Rack the slides. I mean, if you were in this predicament and you didn't do that, I would probably call you dumb. They open the door and they go in. And what they see is this long hallway. It's lit up, and they can see a wall, and it's almost the exact same size as the first one. So they start to walk down the hallway, and they realize as they're walking through, they're like, whoa, this isn't concrete walls. This isn't a hallway. And they turn and look, and they realize that it's some sort of retained or very thick kind of glass. And it's on both sides of them. And they both stop, like they're in the middle of this area. The door's probably 10 feet behind them. And they both are like, they both look at each other like, holy shit, what did we get ourselves into? And that smell, that vibration of the ventilation. Dylan's friend turns around like he's going to run out. Dylan's like, where are you going? And he's like, I'm propping the door. And he props the door. And probably the smartest thing ever. Props the door. They start to walk. They get to the wall, the far wall. Now, as they're walking through, they're looking at the walls aside of them. And they know they can see that it is glass. Because it's from the light above it, it's got to shine. But they can't see through it. It's almost like a tinted glass. They get to the base or the back wall, and they turn and look down back at the door that is open, propped open by his friend. They can see into that second or the very first part of the downstairs area. And they're just like kind of really goosebumps all over their arms. They start to walk out, and they hear a thwack. This just thwack noise once, and their heart drops. He's like, I almost pissed my pants because it's quiet. We're not talking at this point, and it's quiet. And it was like something hit that glass wall, and it was on my side. My best friend's on that side. I'm here. We turn and look at the wall, and it's tinted. So we dig out our flashlights, and we put the flashlight on the glass and turn it on. And we can sort of see through it. Sort of. And what we see is it looks like kind of like a holding area. We can make out what looks to be like hay spread all out. Some sort of just weird, almost organic, like a tree log and rocks and just weird, abnormal stuff to be in like a holding area. And it smells, once again, like a farm, but then that kind of really gross decay smell. Just this vile decay. They're looking through. They're making out what they're like. All right, there looks like a log over there. Is that a log? What's that? What's this? And as they're doing that, they make out movement in the back of that holding pen. I have got goosebumps on my arms when he was talking to me and telling me this shit. He's like, dude, there's something back there. His friend's like, I saw it too. He's like, I saw it too. And so they're looking, all through. And his friend kind of looks down, like right there. And he's like, hey. He's like, look down. What is that? And Dylan's like, I don't want to. He's like, what is it? Tell me what it is before I look down, because I don't want to take my eyes off the back of this area and not see whatever is back there moving. He's like, something just moved back there. He's like, it looks like a sheep. It looks like some sort of sheep or something. And he looks down, and sure as shit, it's a sheep. It's not decayed. It's what they can see. It's not a decayed sheep. It is dead, but it's like it's been attacked. Like it's been ripped apart. Like there's maybe one leg on it left. It looks like its head is almost hanging off of it. There's just a lot of blood everywhere. And they're looking and they're like, that is a sheep. Holy shit. And Dylan says, I looked up. I swear to God, he goes, I look up. And he's like, 15 feet from my face is a face on the opposite side of that glass standing there. He said, my best friend saw it at the same time I did because I let out a gasp. He said, my best friend goes, what the fuck is that? And what they were looking at was, it looked just like one of those Belgian Malinois. But it was standing up. It was standing on its hind legs and looking dead at them. And I said, wait, what? And he goes, Jeff. He goes, it was a Dogman. There was a Dogman in that secured glassed area. I'm like, was there eye shine? He's like, I couldn't tell because of the way the light was reflecting in the area and off of the tinted glass. He said, but sure as shit, this thing's staring at me and my best friend. He's like, I think that thwack that we heard was it through the sheep carcass at the glass, trying to scare us, trying to, get our attention. I'm looking at this thing. He goes, I heard my best friend turn, and I kind of peeked over my shoulder to see what he was doing and to make sure he's still standing here. I'm looking at this, what is a Dogman staring directly at me. He's like, it hasn't moved. It hasn't shown any kind of aggression. He said, and my best friend lets out this scream. This just absolutely, he said, when he screamed, I jumped. He said, I saw that Dogman, that creature in there. He's like, I know it's a Dogman. He said, I saw that son of a bitchin' thing, and it lunged toward the glass. So I backed away and turned to see my friend. And my friend is running down the hall going, come on, let's get the fuck out of here. And we just started to run. We get to that one part of the room before the landing and the stairs. My friend shuts the door. He's got it propped open. He shut the door. I don't know why. And we ran up those stairs. As we get to the top stair, mind you, half of it is in dark. So we've got our flashlights out again. We're running up. We get to the door. We open the door and we can hear a motor coming. He said, for some reason, I looked behind us just to make sure nothing was coming up those stairs after us. He goes, there was not, thank God. He goes, but when I turned back around, he goes, I kind of like did a scan. He goes, and I don't know how I missed this. He said, but there was a red light, a red dot on the ceiling, like in the corner of the ceiling. I took my flashlight and there's a camera right there. And I looked at my best friend and I go, there's a camera, we gotta go. Ran out, we couldn't see the motor. We both ran to the back of the building, crawled through the hole that we made, and we started to run through the woods. As we're running through the woods, we hear what we now or only imagined is that Jeep pulling up. We hear 2 to 3 dogs barking and someone talking. We hear the squelch of a radio saying there's an intruder. Whatever we could make out, we could hear dogs squelching and that there was someone here. And we hear rattling of the chain and squeaking of that fence opening. And we just blasted through the woods. As we get back to the opening to where the main one was, not the big base that we flew over initially, but the first one that we ever went to, on day 1, we stopped. He said, and thank God we did. He goes, because there was 2 Jeeps and about 10 guys there, 10 soldiers. No dogs, but 10 soldiers. We stopped and we just froze. And I looked at my friend and I said, I think we can get out if we start running that way. We start to run and we ran for like 4 hours, it seemed like. It really wasn't. It was about an hour. We get out to a main road. It takes us a minute to figure out where we are. We had to go back in the woods, pull the map out, figure out where we were from building 1 and how we ran. We figured out, okay, that's where we are. That's this road. Our car is parked that way. About a distance, about 45 to an hour away. Walking at a walking pace. But we're going to have to cross the road and walk in the woods just in case these whoever military guys are. But what the hell is all that? We're walking, we crossed the road and we're going through the woods. He said, Jeff, I said, what did you see? Did you see another one of those dog creatures? He said, I only know they're dogmen now, but I was calling them werewolves. He goes, did you see another werewolf? And he goes, no. He goes, what I saw looked like a person. He goes, it was a person. He goes, but it was just weird looking. He goes, it looked like it was inbred. Or a caveman. And I said, do you think it was a Bigfoot? And he said, I don't think Bigfoots are that small. He said it was about our size, maybe a little smaller, but it was a person. He goes, and I think there were a couple more in there too. He said it was weird looking. It was just, he said they were naked. He said the one that I saw was naked, but it was hairy too. Like if we lived in the woods for a few generations, how we'd grow hair. He said, but when it looked at me, it smiled like it could see me. And I'm like, he said, do you think it could see you? He said, I think it did. Because it smiled at me and started to walk toward the glass. And he said we just kept walking out. We got to our car. We told my dad when we got home. We took a long way around. We didn't want to stay on the main road. So we took a long way around. We get home and we tell my dad. And my dad sat down with us and swore us to secrecy, to never, ever say anything about this to anyone, to keep it to ourselves and to him. And if anyone ever finds out that you guys were there, we'll deny it if they... And that's when Dylan says, Dad, there was a camera. And he said, well, what'll happen is we'll deny everything. And if we go down, we go down. But I got your back. Thank God nothing ever happened. Then no one ever came looking for Dylan, his dad, and his best friend. But Dylan, like he said, I wish we never walked into that building, the first one. He said, because after that, my life has been fucked. He said, I have night terrors on a daily basis. He said, I cannot hold a job. He said, I'm a functional alcoholic. He said, I'm not drunk telling you the story right now. He said, I'm sober right now. He said, but in a couple of hours, he goes, actually, after we get off the phone, he goes, I'm getting drunk. He goes, because of what? He goes, I can't get that Dogman out of my head. He said, and then when my friend told me what he saw, and throughout the years of discussing it, that thing terrifies me. He said, it was not a crawler. He said, I explained to crawlers what my friend, to my friend, he said, these things were human. But why were they down there with that creature on the other side? Obviously, it's not going to be able to get them. But were they food? Were they food for that Dogman? Or were they some sort of feral humans? But why would our government have feral humans underground? And I was like, I have never heard anything like that. And I asked him, I said, have you ever listened to Victor's description of these facilities that, I know there's one under the camp, the CIA farm, under the farm in Virginia. But that one's huge. But how he described everything reminded me of after he told me what was in the enclosures. But from how Victor said, these things were huge. The enclosures were huge. They were not small. But what? So then he's like, I've heard one of his, and I said, there's in the playlist, go to the playlist and look for a podcast, and you'll be able to find all of Victor's interviews that I ever did with him. I said, that may give you some answers. That actually may help you get over the night terrors once you hear, but why does our government, why would they be doing that in such a far out of the areas where they could, like the one under the farm or in a different location? Why would they have them that way? And are they connected? Are they connected somehow through some sort of tunnel system? What was in the one that they were guarding? Why were they guarding the furthest one? What's in that one? That's one of the biggest questions he wanted to know too. Why were they guarding that one and not the one that we had broken into? You think with those things in that one they'd be guarded, but whatever is down there must have been a lot worse than what we saw. Do you think they, imploded that one building on purpose to kill off what was in the third one. And I was like, Dylan, dude, that's fucking scary. And I said, you know, if you ever need to talk about this shit, you know, I'm in recovery. I'm sober. I never had an experience like what you had. I've seen a Dogman. I've seen one of these creatures. I've seen them run through the woods coming up to me and my friends, but not what you and your friends saw. And then to start that experience off with a thwack, a wet, hard thwack, and you see a dead sheep, mangled, and then on that side his best friend saw human beings. And I don't know. Here's the thing. They may have been feral humans, but what if they were abducted, put in there, used for food, or used for other experimentation? That's Dylan's experience. It's an absolutely terrifying one. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all. I'd like to thank you, Dylan, and your dad for sharing this experience with me. But I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth. God bless you all.